Welcome to Hive Mind. This is the Sharp Edge. I'm here to break down my latest dig, which is the Cancer Within Modern Medicine, parts 1 and 2. I started doing this dig with a friend of mine who is a pathologist by the alias Dr. B. Dr. B and I have been going down rabbit holes for over a month now. And she's quite the researcher, and I've enjoyed it. So definitely wanted to put this dig out. It is a series. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be a 4 or 5-part series, but this is the first 2 parts, with the third part rolling out very soon and probably another thereafter. So what we really wanted to do was give a grand scope of all of the connections since the turn of the 20th century of the cabal and how they have infiltrated basically every aspect of modern medicine. I know the thought can be quite overwhelming and disturbing, but the importance of this cannot be overstated. There is no way for us as a society to move forward and pave a better path for the future without first recognizing what they have done and why they have done it, what their agendas are. So the first 2 parts of this dig are really breaking down the big pharma industry, how that started and how it brought us to where we are today. And then the second part is really breaking down cancer research and treatment. So let's get into it. So at the turn of the 20th century, there were promises made of cures for every ailment with patented and colorfully packaged pills. Yet here we are. So what happened? Well, we were duped. And more importantly, so were all of the well-meaning doctors, nurses, medical technicians, scientists, all of the professionals in the medical field. There's a cancer within what we now know of as modern medicine, and it's eating away at the very heart of its original design. Rather than saving and healing humanity, this cancer seeks to destroy us from within. While there have been many medical discoveries and innovations over the past century, and they have undoubtedly saved lives, there is a small group of shadowy elites that are scattered throughout the world who have been quietly plotting behind the scenes to control the world population by infiltrating and shaping every aspect of modern medicine for the purposes of imposing their own agendas. No institution is immune. Medical schools, foundations, organizations, companies, government programs, you name it, they've all succumbed to this sickness. And in order to surgically remove the cancer within modern medicine, we must first dissect it and diagnose it. This report seeks to analyze the agendas as well as all of the notable individuals, families, institutions, organizations, foundations, government programs, all who have been involved in shaping the world of medicine since the turn of the 20th century. So part 1 is a pill for every ill. In 1878, John D. Rockefeller controlled 90% of all oil refineries in the United States. Then, shortly thereafter, a German scientist by the name of Felix Hoffmann invented aspirin. With this discovery, there was this whole new frontier in medicine, which had begun, and the use of petrochemicals in many of those medicines, including aspirin, penicillin, and later even for cancer-fighting drugs. So the oil tycoon, who had cornered the market in oil in the U.S., sought to expand his empire with the exploitation of petrochemicals in this whole new world of medicine. And at the time, homeopathic medicine was commonly practiced among doctors in the United States. In order to dominate the emerging market, though, Rockefeller would have to completely change the paradigm, and that was no small feat. So the first thing was the creation of the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research, which was established by Rockefeller's friend, Frederick Taylor Gates, in 1901. Gates was inspired and influenced by a book written by a renowned physician and eugenicist, Sir William Osler, entitled Principles and Practices of Medicine. Osler attended the first International Eugenics Congress in 1912. So among the university's alumni have been notable figures, including Cornelius P. Rhodes. And Rhodes was one of the early pioneers of chemotherapy. There were 36 Nobel Prize laureates that have been associated with the school, and the board of trustees included names like Maurice Greenberg of AIG, Nancy Kissinger, and even Jeffrey Epstein. So Rockefeller then set up the Rockefeller Foundation, which was originally conceived in 1904 but was established in 1913. And then in 1910, J.D. Rockefeller and a handful of others joined in this project to embark on this new frontier of the medical industry. So they selected this guy named Abraham Flexner. He was backed by the Carnegie Foundation to travel around the country and gather evidence for a report on the state of the medical colleges and hospitals. The result of that venture was known as the Flexner Report. This was the turning point. It was nothing short of a launching point for the world of modern medicine, which we know today. So the Flexner Report was basically a tool that Rockefeller used to justify the modernization, streamlining, homogenization, consolidation of all these medical schools and hospitals. So as a result, a lot of schools and hospitals closed their doors, and homeopathic medicine was demonized and mocked. Some doctors even went to jail. So this was the dawn of a new era, the age of a pill for every ill. With new standards set in place by Rockefeller through his General Education Board, which was established in 1902, plus the Flexner Report of 1910, the remaining medical schools and hospitals that survived after the Flexner Report were incentivized to teach and research in specific areas in order to get a stake of more than $100 million in Rockefeller Foundation grants. So Rockefeller Foundation was able to steer their research, and this research was driven in areas of finding synthetic alternatives to the organic plant-based treatments for illness, which homeopathic doctors had used in years past. The synthetic drug alternative to plant-based treatments were of benefit to Rockefeller as they could be patented, packaged, and sold by any of his 68 subsidiaries in the Rockefeller drug empire. In the mid-1920s, pharmaceutical companies were merely a peripheral branch of the chemical and cosmetic industries, but by 1928, the booming business climbed to the 16th most profitable industry in the US. And after the discovery of penicillin in 1938, which led to multiple government contracts with various drug companies in order to help in the war effort, drug companies after World War II emerged with new capital to invest in more research and development of more drugs. So the pharmaceutical industry exploded after that. By 1945, just one of Rockefeller's subsidiaries, Squibb, reported profits of 576%. And the Rockefeller drug empire as a whole reported profits of 54% by 1961. That's a huge profit margin. Over time, the small drug companies merged with larger ones. And from the second half of the 20th century on, to present day, the increased consolidation of drug companies has led to the emergence of what we now know as Big Pharma. With billions in profits, the Big Pharma lobby has influenced lawmakers and policy in order to ensure their stronghold in the medical industry. And drug advertisements over the past 20 years has tripled to at least $6 billion a year as Big Pharma has found out that they really work. Researchers are sounding the alarm that Americans are incredibly overmedicated, with as much as 55% of Americans taking prescription drugs regularly, 4 on average, and an estimated $200 billion spent per year in the U.S. on unnecessary and improper use of medication, including the drugs themselves as well as the related medical complications and costs and so forth. The overuse of pharmaceuticals has reached epidemic proportions, with the prescriptions of multiple medications to individual patients increasing by 200% over the past 2 decades. It's safe to say at this point that Rockefeller's vision for a pill for every ill in America has been realized. Part 2, the cancer within the field of cancer treatment. So not only did Rockefeller play a pivotal role in the emergence of modern medicine and Big Pharma, as well as the near elimination of homeopathic medicine, but his investments also led the frontier on cancer research as well. Rockefeller was allegedly instrumental in financially supporting the American Society of the Control of Cancer, which was the predecessor of the American Cancer Society, which was founded in 1913 by a small group of doctors and lay people. One of them was Thomas M. Du Bois, who was a longtime attorney of J.D. Rockefeller. And there was also John Edward Parsons. He was the first president of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and Rockefeller had donated the land for that building. A group of wealthy women were also included in the origins of the American Cancer Society. Among them were the wife of Frederick Vanderbilt, who was the grandson of Cornelius Vanderbilt, the founder of Vanderbilt University, and the wife of Robert W. DeFrost, who was the vice president of the American Red Cross, and the American Red Cross received the Rockefellers' very first grant. So by the 1930s, the Rockefeller Foundation backed research of cancer treatments by Dr. Simon Flexner, who was the brother of Abraham Flexner from the Flexner Report. And Flexner worked with another guy named Cornelius P. Rhodes, who was also backed by the Rockefeller Foundation. And Rockefeller Foundation sponsored Dr. Rhodes to do some research on bloodborne illnesses in Puerto Rico in 1932. So he went to the island, and while there doing his research, he wrote a letter back to a colleague. He was bragging with delight over the murder of several patients in this letter. I'm just going to read it to you. It's disgusting. Cornelius P. Rhodes wrote, "They, meaning the Puerto Ricans, are beyond doubt the dirtiest, laziest, most degenerate, and thievish race of men ever inhabiting this sphere. It makes you sick to inhabit the same island with them. They are even lower than Italians. What the island needs is not public health work, but a tidal wave, or something to totally exterminate the population. It might then be livable. I have done my best to further the process of extermination by killing 8 of them and transplanting cancer into several more. The latter has not resulted in any fatalities so far. The matter of consideration for the patient's welfare plays no role here. In fact, all physicians take delight in the abuse and torture of the unfortunate subjects." He literally wrote this and left it on his desk, and the letter was later discovered by a colleague who made it public and published it, which resulted in Rhodes fleeing the island. Now, of course, there was a whole campaign by the Rockefeller Foundation to sweep it under the rug. Despite the public outcry, Rhodes went on to oversee the U.S. Army Biological Weapons Division, from which he allegedly conducted radiation experiments on thousands of Americans. His research of mustard gas actually led to the implementation of that toxic potion in chemotherapy at Sloan Kettering Institute, where Rhodes was the director. So despite his unethical human experimentation, Rhodes was immortalized on the cover of Time magazine as a hero, as well as the Cornelius P. Rhodes Memorial Award, much to the shock of Puerto Ricans, who described the doctor as this genocidal mad scientist, with the full backing of the Rockefeller Foundation. So in 1939, there was another doctor named Dr. Ochsner who co-authored a paper which suggested the connection between cigarette smoking and lung cancer. He received wide attention and actually joined the board for the American Cancer Society, where he later actually became president. So following his research into the link between smoking and cancer, this Dr. Ochsner, who was previously head of surgery at Tulane Medical School, established the Ochsner Clinic in 1942. He then recruited Dr. Mary Sherman, who became partner in the New Orleans-based clinic. So there's this claim from a book entitled Dr. Mary's Monkey, which describes this allegation that Dr. Alton Ochsner and Dr. Mary Sherman were implicated in a secret project to create a cancer-causing vaccine in order to assassinate Fidel Castro in the 1960s. Sounds far out there, but just hear me out. So as supporting evidence of this, another personal account written by another individual by the name of Judith Baker. She claims the same story. She was part of the same story, and that she was recruited to work on this clandestine project in April of 1963, where she actually met Lee Harvey Oswald and they became lovers. So Baker's story, Lee and Me, reveals that she was asked to participate in this research regarding a weaponized form of cancer that was caused by the injection of a polio vaccine contaminated with the SV40 virus. And what they were doing were using a particle accelerator in the Ochsner Clinic to make the SV40 virus within the polio vaccine more aggressive. We do know for a fact that based on declassified FBI files, Walter Ochsner had extensive ties with the intelligence community. And according to Baker, who wrote the story Lee and Me, David Ferrie, one of the key suspects implicated in the JFK assassination conspiracy, was also working with Ochsner and Sherman on this project. And there was a second lab on Louisiana Parkway that David Ferrie was working out of. So following the assassination of JFK, the Warren Commission arrived in New Orleans to investigate those suspected to be involved in the conspiracy. And on the day the Warren Commission's arrival in New Orleans, July 21st, 1964, Dr. Mary Sherman was found, stabbed brutally, and badly burned in her home. The mystery of her death has not been solved. The book describes that there was a terrible incident with the particle accelerator that burned her. I've seen photographs, which I believe are of Mary Sherman, that would definitely seem to corroborate that. It doesn't look like a fire caused her burns. So 2 days after the assassination of JFK, Jack Ruby guns down Lee Harvey Oswald during Oswald's transfer to jail. And Ruby was found guilty of murder and received a death penalty sentence. The trial was overturned based on an appeal in October of '66. And before a second trial could begin, Ruby died from a pulmonary embolism shortly after a diagnosis of a highly aggressive, wildly metastatic cancer that had spread rapidly to his liver, lungs, and brain. He died in the same facility where Oswald and JFK were pronounced dead, Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. Very interesting story. Check it out if you want to read the books. So moving on, following a lengthy career in the OSS, which obviously went on to become the CIA in 1947, Wild Bill Donovan also had a connection with the American Cancer Society. He was the director of the NYC Cancer Committee of the American Cancer Society in 1952, a board chairman of the ACS from 1950 to 52, and an executive committee chairman of the American Cancer Society in 53. Donovan was really close with a couple, Mary and Albert Lasker. So Albert Lasker, he was known as the father of modern advertising. Mary Lasker, she was a philanthropist, and she was really into funding medical research. She was like the Bill Gates of her time. So Wild Bill Donovan's friend, Mary Lasker, was also a chairman on the board of directors of the American Cancer Society. And she played a huge role in fundraising for the research for the American Cancer Society and also lobbied for the expansion of the National Institutes of Healthcare, which increased the government's budget by 150-fold. She was later instrumental in the passage of the National Cancer Act of 1971, which granted government funds towards the National Cancer Institute and the War on Cancer. Both Albert Lasker and Mary Lasker were all prominent early figures in the origins of Planned Parenthood. The Albert and Mary Lasker Foundation fueled biomedical research with their deep pockets and one of the most prestigious awards in medical research, known as the Lasker Award. Nearly 90 Lasker Award winners have also received Nobel Prizes, and among the Lasker Award laureates were Dr. Albert B. Sabin and Dr. Jonas Salk for their innovations as two of the earliest developers of the polio vaccine, which we just talked about in the story of Dr. Mary's monkey. So until 1963, both the Sabin and Salk vaccinations contained the simian virus 40, SV40, exposing millions to the virus, which may cause cancer, as mounting evidence shows. The SV40 virus came from monkey kidney cell cultures. It was used to make the polio vaccine at the time. And from 1955 to 1963, an estimated 10 to 30% of polio vaccines administered in the U.S. were contaminated with the simian virus 40, SV40. Approximately 100 million children and adults in the US in that time, and countless more throughout the world were inoculated with the contaminated SV40 polio vaccination. And reports of the detection of SV40 DNA in a variety of cancers have raised major concerns as to whether this inoculation with the SV40 has led to the development of cancer in humans. Even the U.S. House of Representatives held a hearing about this in 2003 on the tainted polio vaccines and their possible link to cancer. So, despite the billions in philanthropic and government funding, the cancer war has raged on, reaching a peak of diagnosis and mortality rates in the early 90s and slowly dropping off in recent years. However, cancer steadily has remained the number 2 cause of death in America to this day, and concerned citizens like myself and Dr. B question why the billions in cancer research haven't produced much in the way of results, and allege that the funds that have been filtered through the American Cancer Society were never actually intended to produce a cure. The American Cancer Society remains one of the wealthiest nonprofit organizations in the world, having received $736 million in donations just in 2017 alone. And such astronomical sums beg the question, what would happen to the American Cancer Society's funding if a cure were ever discovered? Like a cancer, the web of influence from shadowy elites has transformed our world of modern medicine that we know today, from overconsumption of pharmaceuticals fueling the big pharma industry to our dependence on chemotherapy for cancer treatment with little hope in sight for a cure. So that is the end of part 1 and 2 of my dig into the cancer within modern medicine. Look out for part 3, which will be coming out soon. And please check out a video, which I will link in the description, on the story of Dr. Royal Rife and his medical research and how it was heavily suppressed by the Rockefeller, Big Pharma, and surgical model medicine industry. I hope you enjoyed this dig. Please look out for more like it. And if you do like it, please share, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We'll see you back next time right here on Hive Mind.